Welcome to Season 3 of Voices of the Goddess podcast, where we empower, inspire, and uplift women to be the goddesses they truly are. I'm your co-host, Julietta, the Magical PT, owner and founder of Body and Soul PT, as well as Soul Candy, intuitive, handmade, and one-of-a-kind jewelry and artwork. I support people in finding the magic within themselves, creating balance in their body and soul.
And I'm your other co-host, Graciela, published, award-winning, and professionally certified portrait photographer specializing in boudoir and personal branding. I create portraits of who you are and not just what you look like so that you can become who you've always been. Join us each week as we sit down for a heart-to-heart chat, sharing stories and insights with listeners across the globe. Laughter and tears alike abound as we access ancient wisdom in modern times through unique and exciting storytelling, supporting you on your life's journey. Welcome to the circle and enjoy the show.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Voices of the Goddess. Good morning, Graciela.
Good morning. Good morning. I shouldn't timestamp this by saying good morning because I know people listen at every time of day. So hello, beings. How about that?
Yeah, we could say just hello, but that's all right. That's all right.
It's all good. How are you doing?
I am doing good. You know, it's a Monday morning today when we're recording. It might not be Monday morning when you're listening, but I like
Time
Mondays.
is arbitrary. Time is arbitrary anyway. It's all just
right. It's made up. But no, I know like a lot of people don't like Mondays because like you got to go back to work, but I like Mondays.
I like Mondays. I know, right? I've never had a problem with Mondays. Maybe it's because I'm always thinking a day ahead, like what do I have to do tomorrow and what's my next thing? And so I'm excited to get started. But even when I had a regular day job, I never dreaded Mondays. It wasn't a thing. I don't know. I have so many other things to pick on, but Mondays is not one of them.
Right? So what'd you do this weekend?
Oh, girl, let me tell you, my daughter's 13 and she's really into this anime world. And so I went to something called Otaku Fest, which I have been purposefully Otaku. Yes. It's basically a convention for fans of anime. But I've been torturing my daughter all week because I've been calling it Wakaduku Fest and Wikidiki Fest. And she's like, Mom, it's Otaku. And I'm like, whatever, it's just blah, blah, blah fest, you know. And
So how was that?
It was actually really sweet. I'm not personally a big anime fan. Like, we're probably going to lose like 47 listeners here, but I'm not even into like Marvel or DC. I don't know the difference of the comic, whatever. I'm just not a comics person. But it was really neat. It kind of reminded me, to be honest, of like when I go to motorcycle rallies, like you have in your head what you think it's going to be like. And then when you get there, it's just regular people doing regular things and having a good time. I really had to resist the urge to walk up to everybody and say, what's your day job? Because everybody's dressed up like in full costume. Like you could tell some of these costumes took months to put together. And they're just
your daughter wearing a costume?
Oh yeah, she had a whole cosplay thing going. She was very
Were you wearing a costume?
I probably looked like I was wearing a costume, but my costume was hot, tired mess mom following her daughter around. That was my look. But it's really neat. And actually one of the things, you know, I'm a boudoir photographer, right? So I'm constantly hyper aware of how people feel in their bodies because healing, a lot of that is a big part of what I do with my photography. And I have to tell you, there was not one person there that I saw that was like checking their hair, checking their body. Like everybody just looked so comfortable and so happy. And they just looked like, I don't know, like not worried. You know how like when you're the different one, right? And you're in a certain group, you're fidgety, you feel uncomfortable, right? All of these things. Everybody here was as if like someone had opened the secret door to like where you get to just be yourself, you know?
They were with their tribe.
Right. That's exactly what it was. It was really cool. It was really cool. Also I got overcharged like $5 for like a thing of ice cream that's not even like one scoop, and I was like, oh. But you know, you're at the fest, you play the fest prices. So, but my daughter was in consumer heaven. She bought 1 million figurines and just stuff. She kept on buying stuff. So, but she's happy. It was cool. But I was also thinking like, okay, as an extroverted introvert myself, I need to go home and rest because it is definitely overstimulating.
Yeah, I avoid stuff like that as much as I can. And I think that's one thing that is a big misconception out there is what is introvert and what is extrovert. And because really what it means, extroverts are people that get energy from being around other people. Introverts recharge being alone. And so I think you're a little bit better at it than I am, but I can pretend to enjoy being around people and converse and make conversation, but I am very truly an introvert and go crazy when I don't have my alone time. So yeah, events like that definitely stress me out.
Yeah. For me, it depends on what the theme of the event is, right? Like in a bit, I'm going to go to when I go to photography conventions, I'm a little bit more perky. I'm a little bit more interested. But like the last time I went to a photography convention at night, they would have programming all day and then they would have like an hour break. And then at night they would have parties and I could never make it to the parties because I would finish my day and then I'd have to just go back and just chill, like just, and plus I was in Phoenix and it was like literally 100 degrees. I would walk into my hotel room, rip all my clothes off, turn the air down as low as possible and be like, nobody talks to me. So yeah, I get that. I get recharging by yourself.
So you could be a shy extrovert.
Maybe.
Like wanting to be around people, but not I don't really wanting to interact with them.
Yeah, no, I do like being around people because I love that. Like I love people. I love chatting, also like, no, I need to, my recharge is definitely by myself for sure. For sure. Yeah. Like I love my children and I'm like, you have hit your interaction limit with mom today. So I'm going to need you to just pack it up and go to your bedroom and then you can come back in 20 minutes.
All right. Let's bring our guest on.
Let's do it. Here she is.
Welcome, hello. Stephanie.
Welcome.
Thanks for joining us. Would you please take a moment to introduce yourself to our audience and tell them a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I am a psychotherapist and an author. I have a new book out called Goddesses of Self-Care, 30 Divine Feminine Archetypes to Guide You. And, my book is really kind of a combination of psychology and spirituality and creativity, I would say.
I have to say, because I've seen it and it is just, it's gorgeous. Like the book, like even if for nothing else, just get it to look at the beauty of the book. It's, and I mean, it's goddesses. So of course it's beautiful,
right?
But very, very well done. There'll be links for people to check out where they can find it, but congratulations. Great job.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. It was really, I feel like it's kind of like a lifetime, everything about my life is sort of culminated in this book, just everything I've been interested in and how I have worked with women and just creativity and all that just, all came together and I'm excited to, kind of get the word out and hopefully, women will be attracted to it because they can learn so much about themselves and, discover the goddess within.
And I love that you're a psychotherapist. Whenever we get books like this, you always imagine someone locked away in a cabin, just feverishly writing away. But you have a day job, you have a whole nother life, right? That
Yes.
You've lived. So I'm curious how those two things dovetailed. I'd love to really hear just one of your great success stories, but tell us a little bit more about how those two things work together.
Okay, yeah, I would kind of consider that a success story, which is that, so I've been a therapist for about 30 years and about 10 years into my work as a psychotherapist, I started really embracing my own inner artist and finding creative ways to express myself. And I started introducing that to clients. And, not everybody was always going to be interested in that path, but many, many women in particular have really embraced a lot of what I started to introduce. And I'm not technically an art therapist, but I really kind of started bringing that concept into our work together. And one of the things that I do is called soul collage, one of the art forms. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but soul collage is you're creating these cards that, in a sense, you're creating a deck, and there's 4 suits to a deck, and the 4 suits represent different things. Like there's an archetype suit called the Council, and then there's a suit that represents the different inner parts of a person, the critic, the angry child, whatever, however you might, the perfectionist, right? We can all identify different aspects of ourselves. And then there's a suit for the chakra animal allies, which is fun to play with and learn about and figure out who your allies are in the animal world. And then the 4th suit is called the community. And that's the people in your life, or it could be characters, but, or mentors or teachers, family members, friends, anybody that has sort of been important to you in your life. You might make a card, and they're all images that you're collaging, no words, just images, which really helps you access the right side of your brain and get out of your, thinking monkey mind.
So everyone makes their own cards?
Yes. So yeah, that's the idea. I mean, your deck is, personal to you, and you're creating it over time. I've been doing it for like 20 years. And, you can use them like an oracle deck. Like you've made all these beautiful cards, and they represent different aspects of your life, and we could say of your soul. And then, like, what I do is every day pull a card, and like, what is this card telling me today? What energy does it have? And so, in fact, I use some of the images in my book are some of the soul collages that I have created.
That's cool. Really beautiful. Super cool.
Thank you.
I can relate so much to your story. I'm a physical therapist. And so, you start in this Western medicine, very science-based, evidence-based. And yes, there's always a creative side to me, which I've been definitely using much more as time evolves. And then there's also just the experiences beyond what this 3D world is about, experiences outside of the 3D world. And after a while, you just can't ignore them anymore. And they start trickling in and becoming a part of the practice. So like when you were telling out your story there, I was like, yep. Mm-hmm. And I'm 30 years in as a PT. And so we're kind of on the same timeline here. So
yeah.
It's always nice to know you're not the only one stepping outside the box of our Western
paradigm.
Paradigm. Yes, exactly.
And I think the time is ripe for that. I think it's the perfect time to be your full self like that. So I would encourage both of you having those gifts to like loud and proud, because it's so needed. It's so needed.
I agree. And I've gotten, so I ask a lot of my clients, or most of them, I would even say, like, so what is your creative outlet? And some people are like stumped by that. Like, I don't know, and I just feel like that's important for us to figure out and own and, play with. And, I think our imagination allows us to just, construct a new world, and our imagination helps us heal.
Mm-hmm.
And it helps us stay connected to the, spiritual world, however you might see that. And
I think it's important too for people, because a lot of times when we say being creative, people think that has to be something in the art realm, whether it's,
yes,
paintings, photography, sculpture, music, but it's not limited to that. I mean, creativity can come in so many different forms, and it might be how you landscape your lawn, or it might be how you clean or organize. Like
Cook a
creativity
meal.
can come
Right.
out in so many different ways, but especially as women, because it's part of our essence to be creative. And so finding ways to express that is important to our well-being, it is self-care to.
Absolutely.
It's also part of evolution, right? It's how things keep moving forward. I tell my kids all the time, like, get bored. I need you to get bored for a second, because they're so stimulated and there's always stuff in their faces. And I'm like, if you would just sit still long enough, I promise you that at some point, boredom takes a tiny little flip and it's into creation. But you just gotta sit still for a second.
Good point.
Right. And it's true. I know for me, even as I do photo shoots, if I'm too focused on what's next, like if I'm performing for a client, then I'm not being creative. For me to be creative, I'm going to need everyone to sit uncomfortably for just about 30 to 60 seconds and let me receive a message. Let me receive the message that is the creative thing that's going to take your product forward. Right. Yes. But if you don't clear your brain, there's no space for it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So speaking of receiving messages, we'd love to know, what's one piece of advice you've received from another woman that has impacted your life in some way?
Well, let's see. Okay. When I moved, I live in North Carolina, and I moved here from Los Angeles, California about 15 years ago. And that first year here was very chaotic, and it was very, unmooring. I don't know if you've made a big move, especially from one coast to the other, it's, it just shakes your whole world up. And, I was a therapist, but it took me a while to get my practice up and running and get licensed here. And it was just a mess that first year. I felt like, oh my God, what's happened? What did I do? And I was talking to a woman, a colleague. She was an older woman too, and I really admired her and looked up to her. And I was talking about how I just felt so, felt so chaotic. And she just said, "What if you embrace the chaos?" And I was like, "Oh my God, yes, that is exactly what I need to do." And what would that look like? And that it was like flipping a switch. Somehow, everything that I'd sort of been fighting against and feeling like this isn't working or what have I done, all of a sudden started to feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. This is that liminal space, right? When you're betwixt and between, and you hadn't really settled in yet and found my ground here, we could say. And so and one of the goddesses that in my book that I talk about is Kali. And, she's this Hindu destroyer goddess with 8 arms, and she holds a scythe in one arm. And, we have to destroy or end something for something new to be born, so a death. We have lots of mini deaths in our lives. And this was one of them. it was the death of my old life, which had many years in LA and starting out as a therapist there. And then, that had to die. And it was really hard. I was having a hard time letting go. And once I started to really do that and embrace that concept, that it's supposed to be chaotic. Who says it's supposed to be orderly and easy and, everything fall into place? Then
that's boring.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I like that idea though, because chaos is present a lot.
It is.
And, one of the things that comes up a lot with clients is like, we get to be okay with the things that we don't necessarily like, because they're going to happen. There's always going to be stuff out there in our lives that doesn't feel comfortable and easy and smooth and whatever. And we get to be okay in those things and learning to be okay with whatever that is. Changing that's a total cultural change, moving from West Coast to East Coast. I come from Wisconsin, and I moved to Florida little over 25 years ago. And that was a huge, especially moving to South Florida, which feels more like Latin America sometimes than the US. But, there's always going to be stuff in our life, whether it's a move or change in job or change in everything. I also feel that, we don't really want to talk politics here, but looking at how people react these days to politics, it's like some people I see, they're losing their minds over this. And it's like, our elected officials are going to change every 4 years at least. Right. And like we get to be okay. It's like, yes, and you still get to be okay.
I love that, Julietta, like sometimes just saying it's okay does actually remind you that it is actually okay. Like for all the philosophy and all the beautiful words in the world, I'm telling you, just it's okay is really so powerful, because it does like ground you again, right? And just remind you that, hey, it is okay. Things do change, and they always change. And Stephanie, I love that you said, something has to die for something else to be reborn. I always tell my friends and clients, nature abhors a vacuum, right? Mm-hmm. Create the vacuum and it will be filled with what you're looking for. You just have to focus long enough into it, right?
Yes.
That's really amazing. I'm just enjoying this so much. I'm kind of sitting back today and just listening to you two. You guys are so great. Julietta, we're gonna do, her book is her book, right? So I'm not gonna ask. Well, I'll ask. And Stephanie, if there was a book that you would recommend that you think everyone should read, obviously other than your own, unless yours is the very best one, and that's okay too.
Well, I've been interested in goddess spirituality for a long time, maybe 20, 30 years. And, Women Who Run with the Wolves is a classic. And I swear it is a book I have been reading for 20 to 30 years. It's not a book I would ever recommend anybody try to sit down and read cover to cover at one time, right? It's too much. But it's so rich, and you just kind of you can go into it and read a story, and then Clarissa Pinkola Estes, the author, kind of talks about it and explicates it and really helps you think and feel into the themes of these stories, which are very mythic, and that's also in my book. These goddesses all have their own story. And to me, that's fascinating. Like, what can we learn from these, ancient myths? I've always been interested in myths and fairy tales and all that stuff. So anyway, that's what that Women Who Run with the Wolves is about, taking these classic fairy tales and myths that we've been around for, centuries, and helping us see ourselves in these stories, and particularly women, and how to embrace the wild woman within. So that's what I would recommend.
We used to have a book club inside our goddess group, and that was one of the books that we did. And so like when we had a book, it was like the book for the month. So we had to get through that book in 1 month.
Yeah, that's too much.
That was torture. And it is a great book. One of the things I struggled with is she has a very large vocabulary. And there were times I was reading the book, I'm like, I need to have my dictionary sitting next to me, because she's using so many words that I'm like, what exactly does that mean?
As you should.
That might be more of a book for you, Graciela, with your English background. I might have enjoyed it differently if I wasn't reading it with a time deadline that I had to get it through.
Absolutely. I think you could read 1 or 2 stories in a month, and that would be enough to take in and try to, really feel into it, because that's what those stories do. I think they can, really help us look at ourselves. And she's a Jungian psychologist, and I kind of use a lot of Jungian kind of concepts in my book too, just because I think it's so rich and helps us really, again, understand archetypes in a way that serves us.
Stephanie, I love that you're giving everyone permission to take their time and savor a book.
Yes.
Usually we're on a time deadline, or we feel bad, that we have books pending. I'm in a couple of like Facebook book groups, and it's really interesting to see how everybody approaches books. Some people count them off. I read 15 books this month, and then other people are like, I've had the bookmark in the same spot for a while, and when I'm ready, I'll go back to it. And so I have my to be read pile, my read pile, my read again pile, and I'm always in the middle of this book pile.
Yes. I have a lot of those. Yeah.
And that it's so funny because that book, so one of my faults, maybe it's not a fault, maybe it's a good thing, I don't know, maybe I'm building a library, but I love books. I probably have over 2,000 at my house, but I will buy it and then I'll forget that I bought it, and so I'll buy it again because I really want to read it and I just haven't gotten to it, or like I read the first 3 pages and I put a bookmark in and I'm like, I'll be back to that, and then 6 months later I'll buy it again thinking I really wanted to read this book. So anyway, maybe I'm creating a lending library for my retirement age. I don't.
That's what I'm thinking.
Something like that. Yeah. So anyway, it was really neat.
Cool.
It's still on my list.
So we do take a lot of risks on our life. You took a huge risk moving across country and just completely changing your life there. But what we're curious to know is, what is one risk that you've taken that you know you will never regret?
A risk. I think becoming a therapist too. My first career in Los Angeles was working in television and film. I was a behind the scenes person working with writers and directors. And it was a really fun, creative world for 10, 12 years. And then I just got sick of the industry and sick of the patriarchal, you can imagine, stuff that I had to deal with working for men for the most part. And I just, I'd been in therapy myself and working with a Jungian therapist. And I was like, I want to do that. I want to take control of my life. And, it felt like a risk, to leave a career that I had studied for in college and really prepared myself for and enjoyed to some degree. But it just felt like so many variables were outside of my control. I'm working for them. And becoming a therapist really, not only was it part of my healing journey, but, it really allowed me to, like I said, kind of take control of my life, and I could work on my time schedule. And I just really love working with people, particularly women. I don't mean to say that like I have anything against men, because I don't, but I just kind of feel like my mission in life has been to help empower women. And so, I guess that feels like it was a risk at the time. It doesn't anymore, because I feel like that was a great decision.
I know exactly how you feel.
Well, we talk a lot about how I think generations before us, and even, I think my parents kind of expected it of us kids, and you pick your career and that's what you're going to do for the rest of your life.
Yes.
And I think that's so not what we should be doing. And even though I have, I graduated from high school, took a year off, spent a year abroad as an exchange student, but then I went to school to become a PT, and that's what I did, and that's what I've been doing. But how I practice as a physical therapist has evolved and changed over the years. So how I'm working now doesn't even remotely resemble what my career was like in the beginning. And then I add all these other fun things in, like becoming a podcaster and being an artist, a jeweler. And, we don't have to be one thing anymore. We don't have to pick that one career and stick to it. And
that's an old paradigm that I don't think it's not happening much anymore. People are much more mobile and able to kind of, embrace and really seek out what calls to them, which I think is great.
And I think so much of that is just based in time, right? Like there was a point in time in history that's what needed to happen. And that point in history is different now.
Yeah.
And now we have, I mean, the only reason I have the career I have now as a photographer is because the internet was invented. If the internet had not been invented, I would not have been able to learn what I learned and advertise the way I do and find clients the way that I do and create the life that we have.
Yeah.
Huh? Maybe.
I said maybe, but it kind of feels like, I mean, what you do right now is so important. I mean, because you're a photographer, but you heal when you photograph people. And I feel like even without the internet, you would have found your way there.
Yes. And I do think if you think back to like the Wild West, right? Like there was one butcher, one blacksmith, one whatever, and then it was the family lineage. And so, but those were like survival times. Like we're not under duress like that anymore, right? Like in my opinion, if you're starving in this country, it's because there's a breakdown somewhere, because there's no reason to. I mean, there are resources, even with all their problems, there's plenty of resources. And so I think all I'm saying is that we're lucky to be alive at this particular point in time, because for all its problems, it also has the most opportunities we've ever had, right?
Yeah.
The fact that I get to talk to Stephanie in a totally different state, and we're talking like with no delay at all. It's instant. Like
it's amazing.
Like let's appreciate this for a second, right? Like I forget, I was on a flight or something, and I was like, these text messages these days are taking forever to get through. No, it was a comedian. That's what it was. The comedian was on a flight, and he's like, well, the signal has to go from here all the way to outer space. It's got to hit something, and then it's got to bounce all the way back down to Earth. Like, give it a minute.
Right.
Anyway, that said, Stephanie, I'm enjoying our time so much. I would love to end on something really wonderful and sweet that we could all just cling on to if we're having a bad day. So would you share your sweetest, most delicious memory? Something we can savor.
Wow. Well, I guess for me, I, for many years in my life, didn't think I wanted to have children. And then I decided in my mid-30s that I did. And I had a struggle to get pregnant. And then I met my husband, who I've been with for almost 30 years now. And I had my daughter at age 40. And, you know, I was the best thing. I'm glad I waited, because I was ready to be a mother, and obviously giving birth and seeing her beautiful face, and she's just a lovely part of my life. And so yeah, that would be my sweetest memory, is, you know, finally being given that gift.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And I love that you were 40 when you had her. Talk about breaking all the rules. I love it.
Exactly. And I always say it's never too late, right? You can decide to do something late and, you know, create whatever it is. Never too late.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, this show has been jam-packed full of like great stories, great information. So thank you so much for joining us, Stephanie. And like I said, we'll have a link for people to find your book, because it is gorgeous. Like,
thank you for having me. I really enjoyed our conversation, and I think you guys are doing such a great job, and I love listening to your interviews. So
thank you. We are, because you are. That's all. That's all. And now I'm going to need one of those personalized decks. So we're going to have to continue this conversation off air.
Look up Soul Collage. You'll
love it.
And you can look on my website, because there's some information and resources there.
Thank you so much, Stephanie.
All right. Bye, Julieta. Graciela.
Have a magical day.
Have a great day. Thank you, dear ones, for joining us today. Make sure you check out the show notes for details on how to get in touch with either Julieta, Graciela, or today's special guest. Don't forget to subscribe, review, like, and share.
Big love and gratitude for all of you. May the path before you be ever illuminated by your fellow goddesses. Shine bright and have a magical day.